Today we're going to try our hand at making optical illusion art, and we're going to make some tubes. Here you can see the step-by-step instructions on how to make these tubes. The instructions are also in the description in PDF format. Feel free to print those out along with the rubric that is provided. First thing you're going to need is an 8x10 piece of paper, and we're going to draw 5 to 6 vertical wavy lines. Once those lines are created, we're going to divide our paper in the center using one horizontal wavy line. Once the center horizontal line is created, we have everything in place to make that optical illusion. Now all we need to do is connect those vertical wavy lines together, creating a U-shaped pattern. It seems easy enough. Alright, let's get started. Make sure you have your pencil and paper ready, your colored pencils in the background. Step 1, here we go. Using a pencil, we are going to now draw 5 to 6 vertical wavy lines on our 8x10 piece of paper. Notice how there's no rhyme or reason when drawing these wavy lines. There's no pattern, it's just wavy lines on the paper. Feel free to explore different depths, different widths, to create multiple unique optical illusion tubes. I'm numbering the tubes to make sure I'm following the criteria precisely. And moving into step 2, we're going to divide that paper now in the center using a very random and horizontal wavy line. Alright, step 3. We are now going to connect our tubes and create that three-dimensional look, making the U-shaped pattern. So on the top of the vertical wavy line, I'm going to make that inverted U, and then underneath on the bottom of that vertical wavy line, I'm connecting those tubes by making that U shape. Now it's obvious the more U-shaped rings you put into each tube, the more detail it's going to have, the more unique each piece or each tube will be. So play around with the depth of each ring that you incorporate into each tube. Find a rhythm of going back and forth on each tube instead of starting from scratch. Once you get the rhythm in place, it's really easy to complete. Super fast, super efficient. Challenge yourself to make sure that each tube is unique. As you can see here, I'm starting to erase my numbers. I have figured out how many tubes I have, and I'm just continuing that rhythmic motion of going back and forth, connecting each tube as I go, making it look almost like a ring, going back and forth to create that optical illusion when it's completely colored in. As you can see here, the rings that I'm drawing are pretty dark. I don't suggest that. The only reason that I'm drawing them the way they are is because I want to make sure that they showed up on the camera for you. When you draw your rings, make sure you use very light pressure on your pencil. You don't want those rings to stand out the way these ones are. The lighter you press, the less work you're going to have. when it comes to coloring your optical illusion rings. Remember, we don't want the pencil marks showing up in our optical illusion. So what I'm going to have to do when I begin to color is I'm going to have to start erasing these. Step 5 is all about being creative. Let's take a look at this criteria. Remember, the criteria and the rubric are both in PDF form, ready to print in the description link below. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our school colors and color in a tube. Go Mustangs! The next tube is going to be our favorite sports team colors. What is your favorite color? Do you have 1, 2, 3, 4? You're going to color that third tube in your favorite colors. And then the rest of the tubes are going to be colored in a monochromatic form. Remember, we can use different values of the same color. When we move into step 6, the actual process of coloring our tubes, we want to make sure that our pencil crayons are very sharp. If they are dull, it's going to be very difficult to create that optical illusion. We're going to shade the sides of our tube darker than the inside of our tubes to create that illusion that there is a round center. I suggest you outline the tubes that you plan on coloring to make sure that you use those outlines as a guide. Start nice and light and then darken the sides as you go, and that's going to create the optical illusion. Did you know that coloring itself reduces stress and anxiety? Coloring has that ability to relax the fear center in your brain. If you look at this project with an open mind and take the time to actually enjoy the process, you're going to find that the coloring itself is quite relaxing. I suggest that you do 1 tube a day. Don't try to be outcome oriented and finish this entire project in 1 day. You won't enjoy it, and the tubes will look messy. As you can see here, I'm outlining the tube itself to make it nice and dark on the outside, and in the center there's that light source. Remember, we want it to look like the light is hitting off the center of the tube. Now, my school colors are black, red, and yellow. Go Mustangs! What you're going to see here is that I have 2 reds that I'm using. And if you have more than 1 color value, use them. It's just going to create more depth in your coloring. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take the darker red and I'm going to outline the sides of my tube, and then I'm going to go back with my lighter red and I'm going to shade even more. It's just going to create a bigger pop in the color, and it's going to help with that illusion and the focus of the light source in the center. This coloring is done in real time at the moment, which means I haven't done any fancy editing to show you or speed up the process. I wanted to show you exactly how time consuming creating the shading on each tube is. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. So enjoy the process. Don't look at it as something that you have to complete right away. Take a lot of breaks and come back to it. You're going to notice as you continue to color that you're going to constantly go back to different areas of your tubes and say, oh, the light source isn't super pronounced in this area, or I could have done the sides darker over here in this area, and that's okay. That's part of the process. I think I went over each tube 4 or 5 different times just to make sure that I had different light sources hitting in specific ways, and that the sides of the tubes were very, very dark. Remember, it's the shading that makes this an optical illusion. The darkness on the sides are going to pull your eyes towards the center where the light source is. So take your time and really focus on creating a different value from one side to the next. As you choose your colors, I would play with them on a scrap piece of paper. You're going to notice that some colors are more difficult to work with. For example, the yellow, not the easiest to work with only because it's such a bold color. It's hard to find the light source in yellow when it's so bright and vibrant. So really consider the different outcomes that you're going to have when using these colors. There's nothing wrong with having a scrap piece of paper beside you to try different shading with different types of colors. Just reflecting back on our criteria, tube 1 is our school colors, and we move into tube 2 in the criteria, which is our favorite team colors. I'm not going to tell you what team it is, but I am going to tell you that my favorite team is hockey related. Can you guess what it is? Just remember, every time you go in and create these tubes, you're going to want to make sure that there's no pencil marks, and you're going to want to color darker on the outside and lighter on the inside. Alright, I'm going to bet that you are completely tired of watching me color, and I totally get it. But before I leave you to peruse the rest of this tutorial, I want to go over one last thing, and that is that white is never truly white. You can't just leave those tubes blank. You have to add value to the white. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. Know that this tube itself has blue, white, and then red. If I were to leave the tube as is and just leave that white area blank, it wouldn't have that optical illusion effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a gray and I'm going to color the outsides of that white tube. And I'm going to do it very light at first, and I might have to do it darker on the sides as I go and play around with the colors. If I were you, I would take a scrap piece of paper and I would figure out if I'm going to use a brown, a beige, or a gray. I chose a gray, and it worked out really well. So I put those values on the sides of that tube, and then I went over that in white itself so that it looks complete. If I were just leave it blank, if you can see on the right hand side, if I were to just leave that blank and not use the grays in the tube, it just would not look complete. So play around with the color and know that white is never just white. There's always some value in there. Moving into the third part of the criteria, using your favorite colors to create a tube. Well, I don't have a favorite color. I know, very cliche, but I love them all. So I decided to do a rainbow tube using all the colors of the rainbow in this tube to create that illusion. It was a little bit challenging because some of the colors, again, as I said, don't go on the paper as nicely as the other colors, and they didn't blend as well. But overall, it's a nice, bright, and fun tube. The last part of the project, we're filling in the rest of the tubes with a monochromatic theme. So if it's blues you like, use blues. If it's purples you like, use purples. Use them all. Just make sure that each tube is one color. I decided to use different values of one color in my monochromatics just to highlight the uniqueness of each tube. Just looking at the final product, showing that I've hit all the criteria points using my school colors, my favorite colors, and my team colors, and then layering that with some monochromatics just to give it a little bit more of an illusion. Noticing that the sides of each tube are a lot darker than the inside. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this tutorial with me.